Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ryan Housing, and I'm the Teacher Development Manager for Macmillan Education International Curriculum and Caribbean. Thank you so much for joining our webinar this afternoon with Marion, who's going to be focusing on agricultural science and a meet and greet. If you have any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat box. And specifically, if you have any questions for Marion regarding the resource, then it would be great if you could pop those into the chat box so we can have a look at those towards the end of the session. So I will pass it over to Marion now. Thank you.
Hi everyone. So I'm Marion Perrott-Pearson. I'm the author of the second edition. I'm working with Ronald Ramarek Singh, who wrote the first edition. So we worked with some of his information from the first edition. It would be great if we could find out where some of you are from. So could you can start by using the chat box to tell us where you're from, particularly which island, but the places in the islands would be great as well. Thank you. So I'm currently coming from the middle of England, which is a place called Warwickshire, just outside Coventry in the middle of England. Anyone going to pop in there? Trinidad we've got. Great stuff. Another one from Trinidad, Belize as well. Brilliant. If you hear any shuffling going on in the background, I'm just going to apologise in advance. I have a 1-year-old dog who has been a bit troublesome. So he lives on my sofa most of the time over there, but every now and then he jumps up and starts pottering about. So just to let you know that if there's any shuffling, that's the surprise in hand. Oh, hiya, it's Stacey Ann from Manchester there in Jamaica. That's brilliant. Went to Jamaica and Trinidad when I was doing the photographs for the book. And hiya, Thomas James or James Thomas there. Okay, right, everybody. Well, it's great to see so many people have joined the webinar, and I think it's a good time to get started. So the new book, Agricultural Science for CSEC Exams. I can scroll through some of the slides. There we go. Okay, so this is the second edition. First edition lasted about 10 years, if I believe correctly. And I took a lot of the photos on this, as well as writing the book back in 2019. So it was pretty rapid work, but it was in reflection of the new syllabus, which was issued by CXC. So we need this new edition because the syllabus has changed. So obviously some topics have been added and some have been deleted. And also the order of the topics is slightly different as well. So we needed to work through how that was fitting together. We've also got the school-based assessment, and because it's worth 40%, we thought it should have its own section at the end of the book to include a sample project showing students what they can do to achieve those top marks. I always think an exemplar like this is very, very useful. So we'll go into the school-based assessment in a little while when we get to that section. We also listen to the teachers, so great staff at Macmillan Education, particularly some, I think a number of you would have met Chloe. We listened to the teachers, we focused on what was the problems, what was wrong with the last edition, how we could improve on it. So the new edition's full of these pedagogical features to support teaching and engage students. So it's really important for that engagement to try and make it more visually appealing, more attractive, even though there is some quite difficult work in there, some quite dense concepts. There's nothing wrong with displaying those concepts in a style that is visually very appealing. I was quite keen to make sure that things were accessible. So we've got a checklist of objectives at the beginning and a concept map for each unit, so you can see what's going to be going in, what you can learn each unit. The case studies in there, they're from all the way across the Caribbean, and I'll talk about some more about those case studies in a bit. There are also in-text questions which came across from the old edition, not the same questions, but just that same style. And as well, there are practical activities. So I hope to put more practical activities in, because I feel very strongly agricultural science is a very practical activity. If it's not taught in a practical way, I know that a lot of you are restricted in as much that you've got to teach it in a classroom, but actually classroom-based teaching doesn't always suit the aspects of agricultural science. There are some elements of theory that need to be taught in a classroom, but obviously the more practice and the more practical the students can be when they're learning this, then it's far better. Just simply for engagement, simply for the fact that students pick a subject like this because they do want to be doing something different. Each unit ends with this examination style questions, and that's designed to help students prepare for exams. So you've got multiple choice questions and so forth. We'll go into those when you see those in a minute, and a new revision map feature to show how all the concepts link together. I always think it's a shame that when you study a whole topic for a qualification, that it's only really in the last 6 months that things start to, the pieces drop together and you can see the picture behind it. A bit like doing your jigsaw puzzle, when you're still doing the boundary and all the, these colours over here and those shapes over there, you don't see the whole picture until towards the end. And I always think that's quite a shame. So trying to support students by linking those concepts together. Right, carrying on. So how do we use this book? What's the best way of putting it together? Well, we've got, as you can see there, you've got the concept maps at the top. We've got the ITQs in there. You've got that information about key terms. We'll go into that in a minute. The ITQs have actually got answers at the back. We've got the exam style questions, practical activities, which you can look for in the green boxes, the revision maps, and also you've got the case studies as well. There's a lot of extra detail to help you navigate around this book. So new words, as you found a new word, or as you learn a new word, it's highlighted in the text. So as you can see, here's an example from the role of plant breeding. As you can see, the first new word that comes across is this gives rise to variation. So where you've got variation in bold in the text, you've also got it in blue as a little arrow down the side. So that's to help both teachers and students find the bold word. Okay, so and that happens every time, the first time you come across each new word. Okay, so especially scientific words and the precise words that go with the vocabulary that goes with agricultural science. That's how we find those words. Okay. I feel very strongly that as agricultural science is practical activity, I do want students and also teachers to be able to follow serial diagrams, serial photographs, series of diagrams. It's very difficult when you're given one picture. So if you take this, these techniques, if you just looked at the last photo, I don't know why I'm pointing at my screen. If you look at the last photo, so this one, figure 4.21, if you just had that photograph, would you know how to do budding from that photograph? Personally, I think probably not. Same goes at the bottom. Would you be able to do this activity from this, where you're the cleft, taking the cutting? Would you be able to do that from just one photo, or this one? Any of these photos, would it help? Probably the middle one would be more use, but it's still, again, it's very, very difficult. It's very challenging from a single photograph, and that's why in a number of cases you'll see annotated diagrams where you've got information that we couldn't get in the photograph, so we've actually led up to that photograph so you can see how it's being done, like tongue layering here. And the serial photos again here, budding using a cleft, you can see using a series of photographs how the technique can be explained, and you'll see that there's quite a few cases in this book where that's been used. Okay, so moving on, we've got up-to-date case studies that look at the agricultural problems in the Caribbean. So one of the things that that I quite enjoyed doing, actually. Partly when we came over to the Caribbean and went round to the islands, and partly through research, was to look at the different problems that occur in the Caribbean, to discuss them with people locally, and to see what was the opportunities in future development. So this one in particular, this one's looking at agricultural problems. So we presented it as a case study, and we've used up-to-date details about that. We've given you a little example for the students so they can see with a photograph as well. So this one's at your pradial larceny in St. Lucia. I'm just going to switch off my video just for a second, 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. So we've got this information from St. Lucia, looking at agricultural problems. We've also got other agricultural problems. So this one's the Africanized bees from Guyana. So this is another example. And I think sometimes it would be quite useful for the students if you kept, perhaps if the students themselves keep a list of case studies that occur to them locally. So perhaps within your own island, perhaps. So you'll see there's a range of these case studies from different parts of the Caribbean. But what would be quite nice is if you had local case studies, perhaps about types of pests, perhaps about different types of pollinators, perhaps about agricultural issues that make the news. So it's an opportunity, if you like, for students to create their own case studies, perhaps in a little book they could use that. That's another example of an activity they could work away at. Here's another one. This case study is the potential of future opportunities in the Caribbean. There's quite a lot of research that went into some of this. I found we summarised it quite a lot, or I did, but I was finding academic papers to actually get some up-to-date information and research. In 7 places we asked if we could use their research and actually credit them. Some said yes, some said no, unfortunately. So this one is for mariculture. And this is one of the ones that said no, so we couldn't use. They had some lovely maps, but if you do search, if you go on the internet, you could search potential for mariculture or mariculture in the Caribbean. You probably could find some quite good maps and graphs that go with this information. Okay, so that's the potential. Again, it's also listed as case studies, but I think there's a good case for tools being used in agriculture, and I think that not just useful tools, but I think that some of the concepts, you can create quite difficult things, as you'll see further on. You can you have to buy certain things or create difficult technology. Actually, some of the technology can be quite straightforward. The actual concept behind it, or the theory behind it, is quite straightforward. And you can see here how to build a simple biodigester. What you've got there is the biogas biodigester, and you can see from the diagram just how straightforward that would be to make. A second. So that's an opportunity for the students to engage with this part, to engage with some of the case studies. And this one is a tool to make. I think that might make quite a nice activity, actually. If you were going to your SBA, that might be considered. Okay. Further on, we've got practical activities that occur throughout each unit, and these support learners with learning scientific skills. Okay, so within the syllabus, there are specific skills because this is a science, not just related to agricultural science, and they've got to actually be able to demonstrate, understand and demonstrate these other skills. So some of these practical activities, and I'm thinking all the way through this, I'm thinking, remember we're in, here we're in lockdown, the students aren't at school. If you're remote learning, remote teaching, how can you go about doing that? And a lot of these aspects gives you that opportunity. So it's worth looking through the practical activities and think, well, what can I get the students to do? It might even be slightly out of place on the rest of the course, but actually these practical activities, they range from short independent activities that can be done for homework or home learning, and obviously some more extensive ones we'll look at in a minute. But these practical activities, for example, find examples of pesticide labels and interpret the information on them. Well, that's something they can do if they go into one of the bigger units. I'm trying to think of the name of the supermarket, the agricultural supermarket, or like somebody will help me out here. I'm trying to think where they sell everything from chicken and stock and I can't think what it's called. We have like B&Q, but it will come to me. I do apologise, it will come to me. But yeah, there's opportunities. Hey, thank you, Cassandra. Agro shops, yeah. So there's an opportunity. Cassandra, you'll be my assistant now. So there's an opportunity. You can get the students out to do that. You can look at the information and storage. Obviously, you get them to do what would be peripheral things to the actual agricultural science course, but it's important for students to understand about how chemical stores need to be designed. Yes, they need to know that there is one, but designing a chemical store on a farm, appropriate hazard signs, you can add all the extra details. For example, powders over liquids and so forth. All of that information, what sort of hazard signs they need to put on it. It's an activity that can go from something that you do briefly for homework to once you've designed this chemical store and then doing a written explanation. We're now, you're looking at possibly 2-3 days of work. It's going to be like a mini project that they can get into. And also, it's a mini project that's hands off to you, so they can get on with that. Okay, so there are some more substantial ones, obviously. This one needs more hands-on supervision. So grow 2 varieties of a crop, like tomatoes or corn, this one. And obviously, write down your observations. This is an opportunity to use what we call stages of growth or growth stages. So you can look at, when did leaf 1 occur, when did the first stem break, branch off and so forth. So given those set times, what are you expecting to see on each plant, and is there a delay? And you can do that with different varieties. You could do that with the same variety but different soils. There's lots of variations on this. This is just the practical activity that goes with this particular chapter. There's obviously down here, we've got some research going on, varieties, and suggest the reason why that variety was chosen. So that's an opportunity for students to do research on. Literally, I've put on here, visit botanical gardens and parks and protected areas. It could be their local park. It's just an opportunity to walk down the road, have a look, see what's going on, and then make some notes about what are the plants that they see growing locally. It's always worth doing, because plants that grow comfortably locally, it's a bit silly to be growing things that don't grow locally. Like if I tried to grow sugarcane on my allotment in England, possibly wasting my time. Sugar beet, well, that's a whole different story. We could do that, but it is a matter of looking at what grows locally and identifying them. It'd be nice for the students to be familiar with the local plants and not just agricultural science as a qualification. It'd be nice to have that roundedness, which is what we try to achieve in the book by giving extra photographs, not extra to the syllabus, but by a variety of examples. So we tried to add that dimension to the book. Here's a practical activity that I've tried to simplify. Remote sensing technology obviously is expensive, and it's probably we didn't see any particularly in the Caribbean. It is the development and what's happening around the world. So what we did was work on different activities and basically reduce them so that students understood the concept of the activity. the concept of what the remote sensing technology is doing, although they're unlikely to get an opportunity to hop into a tractor that has variable rate nitrogen delivery and remote sensing technology on it during the course of agricultural science at CSEC. So it was just an idea, just to make sure that the students they benefit from having knowing what's going on around the world, where the technology's at, and they understand the concept behind it. As you can see on here, you're looking at nitrogen level at 40 points on a field. So if what you're trying to achieve is a nitrogen level of 25, I think these are parts per million. So if you're looking at 25 parts per million, what's lower than that? So anything lower than that, you would put in here that needs a dosing of nitrogen fertilizer. So as you drive over the field, that line, that sort of imaginary line I'm putting in there, would obviously increase the fertility by nitrogen, increase it in certain areas. It's so the purpose is so you don't waste chemicals, because obviously if it's already got nitrogen in it to a high enough level to grow the plants that you want, there's no point dosing the whole field, because you'd be dosing the whole field with what would be 10 parts per million, wouldn't you? If you've got over here at 15, so you'd have to put 10 on, and over here you'd have 41, which you definitely don't need. Okay, so the idea, as you go through these, have a look at some of the it's the concept and the simplification of the technology that's going on. Okay, so it is going on around the world. Yes, you can, as teachers, we can direct you to academic papers, or YouTube's great as well, but it is a lot of research. So what we tried to do was make it sort of a simple activities, focused activities on what's going on around the world, what else is happening in agriculture, this is how it works. Once you understand the concept of it, you don't need to worry about expensive bits of kit. It's basically, we're not putting chemicals or fertilizers on where they're not needed. So pretty much it's related to your integrated pest management, integrated chemical management of farms. And at the end of each unit, we've got this lovely revision map, which those of you who met Chloe, she worked incredibly hard to get these to fit together. We all worked very hard in getting the information in the right format, and I couldn't believe it when it came back to me and it looked like this. I was like, oh, that's really good. Is that what I gave you? So I gave it to her in a completely different format, and it came back looking beautiful. So and with lots of nice colours on it. So it's a way of getting the students to understand each section and helping with that revision, instead of I believe last time round it was like a revision checklist of like bullet points that went on for about 4 pages at some places. So this is vast improvement to that, and will help with their studying. So the in-text questions, it's designed to check understanding and recall. They're there as a teaching tool. I think they can be used, they can be overused a little bit. I think sometimes, having been a teacher, I think it's easy to rely on read this bit of text and answer the questions. We can do it like that, but I think sometimes it's too easy if there are lots there. But we did put a lot in so that they are there to support your teaching if you need to. So this one, for example, using the example, explain why it's important to keep seeds of older varieties of crop plants. There's the I'm pointing at my screen again. This is the paragraph that would sort of go with that piece of information. It might be the paragraph above as well. So you've got that question, and the answers to these are in the back of the book. Okay, so they're a useful tool. I think sometimes we can be tempted to rely on them a bit much. We've got their examination style questions. These are pretty useful, given that we've got the multiple choice questions, and then these short answer and essay style questions. To be able to answer these, they will need to have read that chapter and read it in some quite significant focus, with quite a lot of focus and with care, to be able to answer these questions. Some of them are quite straightforward, disadvantages and advantages, but then further down, obviously, there are the more applied questions, giving reasons and so forth. So it's by all means, as you're teaching, use some of the multiple choice questions perhaps to build on it. You can go into all sorts of things from some of these questions, but I'm looking particularly at the short answer and essay style questions, very useful for practicing for exams. And if your students aren't pretty savvy and you haven't used them during the course, they're quite useful for mock exams as well, these ones. Right, there are some extra sections rather in the book. Entrepreneurship and communication. This new section covers skills required to set up an agricultural enterprise, or to be able to obtain employment in the agribusiness sector. So while this was part of the new syllabus, I thought it was quite important to be able to focus it into exactly what students would need for those two purposes. So we have focused it with plenty of examples, plenty of ideas, as well as covering the traditional forms of understanding entrepreneurship and setting up a business, which like SWOT analysis and so forth. I did think it was quite important to be able to give lots of examples about the communication. So my job, for example, I have to talk to farmers all the time. So obviously there are different methods of communicating, but where we do a lot of work to reduce the technology that the farmers I work with have to use. Quite often they're quite a lot older, the farmers I work with, so anything that I can do that prevents them having to work a smartphone or a computer, for a lot of them, is very useful. Right, I think that leads us into the school-based assessment. So this is where because it's 40%, we decided that we needed a full section in this in the textbook for this. So what it does is we've got an example to show you what would be a high-level assessment. It follows the guidelines set out by CSEC. You are going to need to get the syllabus and sit that alongside this while you're going through it. Okay, we did consider putting it in the syllabus so at this point so you could see what was required, but obviously the syllabuses get updated and so forth, so we're kind of like, well, no, we need to have an edition of what is our book, but that supports the syllabus, because the thing is, if we put the syllabus in and then it changes, then we run into difficulties. So we need to make sure that you've got the syllabus right next to you, and be aware that it's different for single and double award. So this piece at the top about the skills that they're required for the two different awards is really important. So you've got to get that completely clear in your head about what they're doing. So the sample SBA was written for a single award with this problem statement. And if I go back, the one that was in the book was about chicken meat and the different types of protein. And it went into, you could see all the data handling methods and the conclusions and the methodology and so forth. So that was how it all fitted together. We didn't put lots of different examples in the book. I think it's quite important for students to be free to develop their own ideas, and then link the SBA that they do to an area of the course they find interesting. On the flip side, what you don't want is every teacher to go, oh no, I've got to come up with loads of SBAs. So I think sometimes on this, we'll give you, I've got a few clues for the SBA in a minute. It needs to be managed as a scientific SBA investigation. So whatever it is you choose, you need to either have a control group or change one variable and monitor and observe the impact of the change, or to have two different things going on in the same soil. So you're just changing, you've got, for example, variety, growing two different varieties and watching what happens. It is very much focusing in on the science to make sure that it's scientifically defendable, if that makes sense. So to make sure that it's clear, even if it sounds like a very simple investigation, simple investigations done well are far better than a more complicated investigation that's sort of done a bit that the student sort of muddies through because they're not quite sure of what's going on and they've changed too many variables. So make sure it's nice and clear at the beginning when you're setting out the SPAs. I've got a few things in here for some questions. I know that we've got question opportunities for you to ask questions to me, or to, I believe you're typing questions if you wanted to. I've got a couple I've got in here. Or perhaps if you ask me, can I suggest topics or titles for the crop SPA? So this would be for a double award, this one. Does corn grow better in alkaline or acid soil? So either you've got to find 2 bits of soil or 2 plots, or you can lime 1/2 of a plot, which makes sense. There we have. That's information from Macmillan Education over there in the question box. Okay. And the investigation for this one, you measure the length of the corn at different growth stages. So that's the height of the corn as it's growing. You can also measure the corn itself, the corn as it at different growth stages after weeks after the ears emerge and so forth. So you could monitor the growth, and then you can draw assumptions whether or not it's limed, alkali or acidic soil, and what its preference would be. So that's a possible topic. This one is that's quite simple. So you can see that you've changed one variable, you've got the same plant growing in 2 different environments, and you've only changed one variable. Okay, this one is slightly harder, but what you could do with it is you could have a number of students doing a similar topic. So is chemical management the optimum way to grow vegetables? So you can use, basically you've got 2 plots or next to each other, or half a large plot where you use chemical management and non-chemical cultural management on the other half, and you're going to maintain records of everything that goes onto the chemical plot and calculate the cost. You're also going to do the same thing on the cultural and calculate the cost. You've got to record the time spent, record the harvest by weight from both plots, calculate the growing cost per plant in both plots, and then calculate the increase in time required to manage vegetable growth culturally and so forth. So you could then compare the data before reaching a conclusion. This could go any different direction, any way, depending on the vegetables, as to whether or not it was chemical management is better than cultural management for certain things. So it will be quite interesting, and you could also have lots of different strands going on. So if you had a number of students doing a similar topic, you could sort of split that around with slightly different tasks going on. So that you could get students quite interested in that one, I should think. Here we go. The other one I was thinking about when I was thinking about possible questions you might want to ask me is you might want to ask me about delivering the course and keeping students engaged that are home learning, like keeping children off their Xboxes and YouTube, I believe. So so this one is the very basic reader section followed by ITQs, and it is the fallback option. The textbook will allow you to do that, and you'll be able to maintain a level of learning through doing that. Okay, it may not be the most engaging method of learning, but you will be able to do that. And that was, as we wrote the book, that's the plan, is so that you can manage, if all else fails, they've got a book, they've got the questions there, the ITQs. The other ones, we've got some other techniques. I'm just going to move this, see if that moves over. No, here we go. So we've got complete practical activities. So any number of practical activities, get them to evidence that by taking a photo. Take a photo, write an accompanying paragraph of their observations. A lot of students might, with the phone, take the photo with the phone, and then in the editing software, write their observations. They could then email that photo to you. Then you would just have a list of JPEGs appear in your inbox. That would be a very easy way to mark and assess that they had actually been through the work and tried things. The feel method moulding technique to identify texture of samples in soil, that would be ideal for that sort of activity, and quite straightforward for students who aren't used to doing it. I think that getting students to own some of the work that's in the book. So, for example, we've got diagrams where you've got some text and some images, some photos, drawings. What would be a good idea is for them to do an entire diagram of their own, but also to sort of draw sections that we've written text in. Obviously, it was a bit conceptual if we did sort of strange diagrams for nitrogen and so forth, but there's no reason why students couldn't go, well, this is a picture, you know, my pink balls are denitrifying bacteria and my orange ones are nitrifying bacteria. So it'd be a way for them to, it's a handling activity, so it's processing, it's thinking about it, it's writing a key, and then doing the rest of the diagram. So it's that doing things with information. So there's an opportunity. We've got here the ITQs, but to use it as a basis for research. So explain why it's important to keep seeds of older varieties in crop plants. Well, which seeds of older varieties have been used in crop plants and why have we used them? So to research an answer for a vegetable, fruit and field crop, just put each one on a PowerPoint slide once they've read the information, found something about it. You know, so what they're sending to you would be a PowerPoint with 3 slides in it. It's not horrendous for you to mark. Equally, it's not so onerous on the students that they go, oh, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to approach that. I can't be bothered. You know, it's not. It's. I think, especially in times of COVID, that making things manageable for students is a good way to engage them with learning, because I think that everyone's motivation is sort of sliding a bit. We've been in this situation for such a long time that anything, sort of the little things that they can do that is a big tick. I've done it, sent it in. You know, that's that sense of achievement, and will keep students going. Okay, a few other engagement ideas I've got on here. Move a picture of me further down. Find a short video on a progressive technique. So I spoke to you about was that variable rate nitrogen application. This one you could use zero tillage or no dig. You can get learners to watch these and then create a table of pros and cons of the new technique. Could it be used in the Caribbean perhaps? And then just do a little explanation. I don't think this will work. I mean, I don't think this will work in the Caribbean because, or this would be ideal because of these reasons. Yeah, it's just to, if they are going to be watching videos on YouTube, get them to just answer a few questions. So you could do that by sending out a 1-page question sheet with a couple of questions on it and spaces for them to answer the questions, or you could do it sort of almost freehand if you like, where they need to watch the video and then create a table and then send that in. So it's a reduction in pressure on you, as well as making the students achieve more and feel like they've engaged with the topic, but through a reduction in this home learning or pressure for some of them who perhaps aren't as academic. Choosing an agricultural commodity. Now this would be a higher level task. Choose an agricultural commodity and follow its change in price before, during and after, or as the world recovers from COVID. So for example, I've picked 2 years on there, January last year to December this coming year. It gives learners the opportunity to research data they don't have and explain what impacted those changes. And they may look at that. I mean, some of them will be able to plot it as a line graph. Okay, some of them might just have the information. You can download it as a table, and you can have a look at that and then say, well, actually, that was impacted by a dry summer or a wet harvest, not necessarily because of the pandemic, but then they might look at something else and go, well, there was nothing happening in March except for a limited number of staff because of the pandemic. So it might have been export problems which caused whatever your commodity is to rot in the port, for example. Okay, so it's just another idea, but as I say, that one's a little bit, I would say probably slightly harder, obviously, than watching a video and creating a table of pros and cons. But nevertheless, I think sometimes it would give students an opportunity to understand that, and it gives them technique, especially the mathematical techniques like handling graphs, handling tables, and so forth. Gives them an opportunity to do that, and as well explain what they're seeing. Be an agricultural service entrepreneur, so to work through the entrepreneurship chapter, but determining a need for support in your area. So what does your area need? Does it need repaired chicken runs? Does it need land preparing for planting crops? Does it need more rainwater harvesting systems? It gives students an opportunity to cost things out. So obviously with repairing chicken runs, you're going to need tools, you're going to need wire, possibly if it was a bit of roofing, you might need roofing felt. Preparing land for planting crops, you're going to need tools, you're going to need time that you're going to have to cost, and building small rainwater harvesting systems. So you probably need to cost the tanks, the pipes, maybe roofing felt if that was needed as well, and the drain pipes from the roof, and maybe even a filter. So depending on what the rainwater harvesting was being used for. So it's an opportunity for students to look at the costs of something quite simple. So agricultural support businesses could be quite a simple thing, and it's not about looking at starting a business and all the different parts of every business. You'd only be looking at something quite small, quite specific. Can I cost it out? What's capital? What's required? What am I expecting for how this the equipment ages, dates? How am I going to need to replace some of this? How much time am I going to need to do this? So it is an opportunity to work through the chapter, and they can do the SWOT analysis and so forth on things. But it will be simpler than looking at starting a farm enterprise with lots of different strands. So this will be particularly if they're not having direct teaching in a classroom, if they're still at home for a long time. This gets them into that entrepreneurship chapter, section F, but it sort of gets them going a little bit, but without making it so difficult that they need a teacher to be able to process some of the information. So it gets them handling each stage, but in a more simplified way. The other one I came up with was to create maps of the village or local area, maybe towns, but to look at maybe soil textures around the locality. It could be just their local area, literally their road, or maybe a livestock heat map. That's another way of doing it. So if they're walking down a road, you can see, well, they're keeping goats. How many goats have they got? Oh, they've got 4 goats and 20 chickens. And they go to the next one and they go, well, they haven't got any chickens, but they've got 2 cows, and so forth. So you can actually create a little map to show what stock is living on the land locally. And then they can look at things like, do they think that the stocking rate is appropriate? Do they think there's not enough water for that? There's not enough grazing, or so forth. So it's an opportunity to sort of create some maps to look at something spatially, so they're not handling necessarily all the time. Read this, write the answer to this question. It's sort of bringing in other skills, but also it's sort of giving, I can't think what the word is, just sort of tidbits of ideas to get people started from different starting points. So you're not always starting with a student having to read a piece of text, if that makes sense. You can always do the data handling on things later on, but you can start with, as I see on here, you've got maps, you've got videos, you've got this is commodity, so that will be in table form. You've got ideas. So that would just be straight mind mapping from their heads, really. And the ones before, you've got that's a visual between drawing and a visual technique. This one's photo, so this is touch and photograph. It's just that range of what you can do. And it is, I mean, agricultural science is a fantastic subject for any form of learning. So you've got plenty of different ways to do it. I've left question 3 blank. So over to you. Has anybody got any questions on the chat that they would like to have discussed, or any questions they want to ask me? Has anyone got any questions about the actual book? Not necessarily the format of the book itself, but has anyone got any questions about the what's available for our Macmillan representative that's on here? Has anyone got any questions for Rena?
I don't think there's any questions at the moment, Marion. So what we'll do is we can just go over the last set of points, and then we can probably, if there are any questions, we can they can email us and let us know.
Okay, that's great. Thanks. So the last few points we've got on here, we've got some online sample lesson plans, which I did a while back. I need to do a few more, I think. So we've got a few in there, which is available for you all. Does anyone want to tell me any parts of the course that they're struggling with? Is there anybody particularly finding? Yeah, there we go. Thanks, Amanda. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I thought you were telling me they are available free on the website. And that's the last page, the contact information page. But is anybody struggling with anything in particular? Cape. Does that make sense to you, Rena? Where's Cape? Have I lost something, missed something there?
I'm not sure. Could you clarify for us, Gregory?
Oh, no. Hang on. That's the equivalent of A level, isn't it? That's the harder one, isn't it? Cape's the one above, isn't it? Yeah, it's the exam above this one, isn't it? Yeah, it's A level. I'd love to. Simple answer. I'm available. So, keep persuading Macmillan. Have a go at Macmillan until they want to commission a Cape textbook. I think at the moment, one of the things that's lacking is it's a bit. Wasn't it quite a small entry? I think I've got a feeling Cape is quite a small, like only a few numbers of students do Cape, and I think that was the problem. But I can make videos and so forth. I might have a look at doing some topics for Cape and having it available on the website. So I'll speak to Macmillan about that, Gregory. See what we can do. But yeah, by all means, bully your Macmillan education rep and ask them for something. So I'm just looking at what Lewis has written now. I'm a primary school teacher. What books are available to support the teaching of agricultural as learning outcomes? Is that the more basic? Is that the agricultural for primary that you're talking, Lewis? Yeah. Well, I did wonder about this because I thought the CSEC syllabus was quite I thought it was quite challenging. And what happens in the UK quite often is that you pick up qualifications. So students do quite a small range of qualifications at lower levels, and then it branches out and they get more choice the older they get. But obviously with agriculture, I mean, I was a chief examiner for agriculture and land use in Northern Ireland, which is the same age group, 14 to 16-year-olds. But we haven't, in the UK, you don't study agriculture below that age. Everything else drops into sort of biology or chemistry. So again, that would be ideal. I'm quite happy to produce more books as required. So I'm just having a look at what's being written on there. So, but yeah, I'm quite happy to work through things. And if you send an email into the publisher, into this Caribbean at Macmillan Education, I don't think there's anything available at the moment, but I'm quite happy to put things together if there is a need and they can assess that as a requirement. So that would be great. I'd love to write more books for you. As long as I can have another trip. Can I just say that to Macmillan? I'm only allowed to, only if I can take lots of photographs and get people. Oh, thank you, Amanda. That's lovely. Thank you. Yeah, is there anything specific about that you found difficult in the teaching of the CSEC, this agricultural science course, using the book? Has anybody had any particular difficulties with it? I'm hoping that it if there is anything that you find that comes up and it doesn't answer what you need it to answer, by all means send an email in, because sometimes there's the syllabus, there's the book, and then there's trying to get that information into the students. And if there is a mismatch and a misunderstanding, or you're finding something that students aren't finding straightforward, or you want more questions or more examples, by all means do come back to me, and I'm quite happy to, as I say, put more lesson plans up, or be more specific with it. I was wondering as well, would a series of videos help as well if they were on the website? So for example, for my job, I have to go and build facilities or support the building of facilities to prevent pesticides going in groundwater. So it's an example of what I do in my job. But because there aren't the facilities everywhere, sometimes I make videos and go to another farm or send the information to a farmer to have a look at that video. So if there was something like that, would that interest you to actually have like sort of 2-minute videos so that people could see what I'm talking about, or any examples? But I mean, obviously they would be in the UK, that's the only thing. They're not examples from across the Caribbean, but I can do some explaining if that helps. Anybody want to write in the text, yes please, or no thank you? We've had enough of you already, Marion. All right, thanks Gregory. Yeah, that's great. I can't wait for you all to have the new version as well. The photos. I think the photos is what makes the new version. It does make it a lot easier to follow, and it's colourful, and it encourages the students to engage with it, which is always helpful. Right, we've still got a typer. Oh, am I just not scrolling down? Rainer, are we going back over to you now? You're going to get just.
We are.
A text of sport gardening at the elementary school. I don't think they do, but I'd be quite happy to put one together. It wouldn't take very long, I don't think. So, that's worth sending, Benjamin. That's worth sending a question into Macmillan, and they'll be able to assess that as as a requirement. Quite happy to put something together for that, if you like.
I think that's most of the questions, Marion.
Yeah, I've still got somebody typing on mine. I'm really enthusiastic.
It's really exciting because they're so enthusiastic about the next updated version. So we're quite keen for our attendees to have a copy as well. So do email us, actually, if you do have any questions or suggestions, because we're always open to hearing from you. And as Marion suggested, some videos might be really useful for you to have, particularly engaging with the resource. And Marion took most of the pictures, if not all of the pictures, in agricultural science. So we are very impressed with those pictures. So I just want to highlight the lovely, bright, engaging pictures. So if we are looking to send Marion out again to the Caribbean, then she would, I'm sure, take some more lovely pictures.
And make some videos, yeah. I did, if I remember, I took over 4,000 photographs. So yeah, it was a whirlwind of 8 days that included, was it three islands? No. 3 islands and 8 days, 3 islands, 4,000 photographs. It was extraordinary. Something amazing. Like, and I felt like half the time I was on an aeroplane or in an airport.
We could add those pictures to
24 farm visits. That was it. We went on 24 different farm visits. That was absolutely incredible.
Awesome.
Incredible. Yeah.
So like I said, you can email us if you have any questions or thoughts. Thank you so much to Marion for a really fantastic and useful session, highlighting the key aspects to the agricultural science resource. Do follow us on social media and do check out our website for upcoming webinars as well. We look forward to seeing you in an upcoming session soon. Once you do have the resource, do feel free to email us and let us know what you think. It's always great to have feedback, so that's always welcome. So thank you again to Marion, thank you to the attendees, and we look forward to seeing you in an upcoming session soon. Take care for now. Bye.